Hey, friends. Thank you for tuning in, and I hope these are encouraging to you. Colossians chapter number 3, verse number 12, starts off with this wonderful admonition and reminder for each of us. He says, "Put on then, as God's chosen ones, holy and beloved, compassionate hearts, kindness, humility, meekness, and patience, bearing with one another, and if one has a complaint against another, forgiving each other as the Lord has forgiven you, so you must also forgive. And above all these, put on love, which binds everything together in perfect harmony." I think this is such a good reminder. He tells us to put on. And when we think put on, it isn't that we make this happen or through our own discipline or creativity, we transform ourselves. No, but by putting on, we're really saying we recognize this is who I am in Christ, and what I have as I have his divine presence living in me. And putting on simply means I release these things. I yield myself. I consent to the indwelling life that he might live through me. And it all begins with remembering that we are God's chosen ones. We were not in pursuit of him. He was in pursuit of us. We did not choose him. He chose us. We receive that. And when we receive him and we accept his life, he says, man, you're holy and beloved. Stop and think. You are God's chosen one. And because you're his chosen one, and because of his beautiful finished work, you're holy. You don't make yourself holy. He makes you holy. And he says, and you're beloved. So it all begins with you realizing you are who God says you are. You're his chosen, you're holy, and you're beloved. And when you're living as one who's chosen, holy, and beloved, well, then you don't need to find life where it can't be found. You don't need to have expectations of others to give you what you think you need, because you have all those things in Christ. And when we realize that we have everything we're ever going to need in Christ, it releases us, because we realize it's him, not us, not our goodness, his. And so then we can have compassionate hearts, because we realize that every one of us are on a journey in this fallen world, and we should be full of compassion for the struggles and the heartaches and the failings of others, because we have them too. And we had them when God chose us and made us holy and beloved. And so he says, have compassionate hearts and kindness and humility and meekness. Why? Because, gosh, it's not because of us that God chose us. He chose us when we were messed up, when we were his enemies. And so why do we have these expectations of others? So let our hearts overflow in this hurting world when people are frustrating us and not going with the program, or not, putting things together right. Well, let our hearts be full of compassion, kindness, humility, meekness, and patience. I always come to that one and I say, Lord, I'm not praying for patience, because every time I pray for patience, it seems like everything seems to go wrong. But we're not praying for patience. We're extending the patience that we have already, because Christ is our source. And he says, bearing with one another. Isn't that way life seems like? There are people that we just have to bear with. He says, but don't dismiss them. Don't walk away. Just bear with one another, and if one has a complaint against another, forgive. Our first response to the irritants, to the people who hurt us and don't seem to cooperate, is to forgive. And why? Because we've been forgiven. He says, if you have a complaint, your first response is to forgive, as the Lord has forgiven you. And how has he forgiven you? Fully, completely, and interestingly, in advance. He forgave us before we committed our first sin. He forgave us 2,000 years ago. And so you also must forgive, because that's freedom. Freedom for us and freedom for them. And then verse 14, he says, and above all these, put on love, which binds everything together in perfect harmony. So when we're having trouble bearing with each other and the life is irritating and all of that, we stop and we go, Lord, you are my life. And I do consent that you might live through me, that I might be an agent of love in this world. And that love would bring everything together in perfect harmony. And so any disharmony in my life is evidence that I am not consenting to him who is love, to living and loving through me. And so I reaffirm, I put on, and I hope you will too. And I love you. Have a great day.